Well, let's imagine that this site slopes steeply from the back boundary. There's been some cut and fill. And let's imagine that your client has been to a friend's place with a similar sort of sloping site and has seen the way the back area has been treated, and he'd like a low retaining wall across the back to hold back some of the sloping site. How best to draw that wall in, that retaining wall? Well, the design here might call for a sinusoidal shape, and to do that, use the arc command. There are lots of options with the arc command, but we'll take the simple 3-point arc, and we'll start our wall somewhere here, and I'll zoom in a little, from there to there, and I'll right click and pick repeat the arc, and I'll choose the continue option. Can you see how that arc joins on? And I'll do this again, repeat the arc, and we're in continue mode. So I want to come fairly close to the tree there, repeat the arc again, come around here, repeat the arc, and maybe to there. Now I'll swing around here and repeat the arc again. We'll go in there, and maybe we can move there, and then repeat the arc but go into a line mode and go to about that point there. So there's the outline, if you like, for the wall at the back of the site. Each one of these is a single arc, and I can pick them, and because they have common end and start points, I can join them. Once they're joined, it becomes a single entity, and the next step will be to offset that single entity to make the wall, the top wall of that arc. If we select the polyline that is going to make that wall, notice that there are a series of blue dots along it. They're control points. So if you need to tweak the shape of the polyline a little, just click on one of the handles and just move it to a new position. You can see there I've just smoothed the curve over a little more. Well, the next step might be to create the wall itself, and to do that, let's offset that polyline entity. So it's modify and offset. We pick the entity, and we're asked to specify a through point. If you right click it this time, the distance default is 1 foot. Let's imagine that it's 18 inches for the flat top of that wall, and you just click and indicate the position, and in goes the flat top. So our wall is taking shape rather well. We could draw a line, pick the draw line, and draw a line from the end of each of these polylines to square the wall off, and do the same over here. Right click repeats the line command from the end of that line to the end of this line here, and we're done. Just a small aside, you'll notice that I'm happily picking these entity snaps just one at a time. It is possible to click on here to the drafting settings and say, yeah, I want object snap on, and I want to have end point on all the time, and maybe nearest, and I'll show you the use of the nearest option in a moment, have those on all the time. I prefer just to let it roll, and certainly when you are learning, just pick individual entity snaps as required. Now you might notice that, if let's zoom out a little, let's imagine this design team here, this people constructing the wall, they quite like to have a small sub-wall running across there to enclose an area. So you could draw a line from about this position here across to make a zone for the tree. Let's do that. I'll say draw a line, and for a first point I'm going to pick that nearest option that we mentioned. So I pick it what that does is help me just pick a point, we'll say here, and we're going to go straight across to the other polyline, and we'll go perpendicular, and that tries to find the perpendicular, this line to be perpendicular with that. Can you see it? It can't work, whereas if I came this way, perpendicular won't work. So we do need to use that nearest option again, and if we put polar is on, so we can move it like so and pick up the line in that way. It's positioning by eye, but I think that works reasonably well. You might then repeat the offset command, pick the line and just offset like so, and exit from there, and then we could go modify and extend, and the first prompt says select the edge, that'll be an edge, and then we can extend that through to there and that through to there. So there's our secondary wall, if you like, going in, making this existing tree sit in a planting area rather like you see there. You may want to pick the tree and go to Tools and draw order and bring it to the front. Now the tree sits above the walling. So to sum up, we now have our retaining wall in position. It's got a nice flat top to the retaining wall, hopefully at seating height, comfortable seating height. As we look from the house toward the back of the property, our feature tree sits in this nice little enclosed space there, so things are starting to take shape. This area through here will be relatively flat, with perhaps a fall away from the house, maybe some drainage behind the wall will be required, but you could put a detailed drawing for how that drainage might be installed and just put a note to that effect somewhere in the plan. We'll show you how to annotate your drawing in a later lesson.